Thank you all for 8 subscribers. I am beyond grateful for all of you. Now we're on the road to 9 subscribers, and if I do end up doing YouTube a long time, maybe even 10 subscribers, chat. Now today's video is basically going to be trimming down the reasons why the Warhammer community essentially are a bunch of bitches. Now, before y'all put me on the subreddit, let me take a quick moment to thank our Lord and Savior Major Kill as the greatest Warhammer lore YouTuber of all time. He always gets the lore right, never makes any mistakes, has never been in any drama, and is downright probably the nicest person and would never say anything bad about anyone. Rage bait aside, but no, actually, as many of you have known, and since what I learned, ever since I came into this hobby around 2020, is that the Warhammer community can rarely ever agree on something en masse, and when it does, it is like a Hail Mary, North Star type of agreement.
Then drive your shitty fucking car! I don't fucking
Community still to this day, and due to recent events, has propped up again and caused many powerful emotions, as we could say, within the community. Most recent of times, if y'all remember, Warhammer recently released the new sculpts for the Custodes models for Horus Heresy, and might I say, are they a massive improvement on the old GW plastic sculpts, dude? Just the way they're more leaner, slightly more taller, and just the overall design that the Horus Heresy team brought to the Custodes is a nice upgrade, and the fact that they actually made a plastic, Custodes dreadnought is just, it looks really awesome. However, the mood has been spoiled by some people who have never gone on side and lived their lives on Reddit and have devoted their entire being to fact-checking every single detail about the lore, not to mention his name, Pontus. But, he's gonna, I'm not big enough for him to react to this, he'll just likely scream at me for being new gen and me ever daring to even get into this hobby without reading every single book and stressing over every single detail and not basically edge highlighting the lore, taking a look at my own video and looking at the analytics, not a single person under the age of 25 who actually saw my first video, and, it's just not a reality check, as I always knew is that Warhammer is populated and still is and will probably be, for the most part, by old heads. And, with old heads, you come a lot of the old guard who wanted to keep Warhammer the way it was. The whole Primaris incident of 2008, when Primaris came and, everyone started hanging themselves over the new designs, and how some still to this day still refuse to acknowledge how good the Primaris is. Not to point fingers at Pontus again, but Pontus is a great example of something that we can both admire and dislike about the Warhammer 40k community, and I feel like he really embodies it a lot in negative and positive ways. First of all, I would like to say that I've watched both Major Kill, my greatest inspiration for this channel, and Pontus, and I would like to say that I do enjoy both of their content. Major Kill's fun Aussie way of explaining the lore, and honestly, the primary lore I almost called him a VTuber, bro. But, the primary, he was my primary source of, lore, in a sense, for the longest time, as I was still intimidated to watch people by, like Luton and other, heavy Warhammer content creators, because Warhammer at the time wasn't as popular as it was today, channels that come to mind, Pancreas No Work, Mr. Bones, Astartes Anonymous, people of those natures weren't really as popular at the time, and, I was way younger back then, and just Major Kill's whole style of content really resonated with me. The short form content, 10-minute long videos, it's pretty standard on YouTube now. But, recently I started watching Pontus again, and, I already knew that Major Kill wasn't that liked in the community because essentially he doesn't fit the stereotype. He doesn't look like what people want him to look like, Not to be a bitch, but he's in shape, he looks good, he goes out, he's confident, he does what he wants, he has friends, all things that are not typical of what people think of in this hobby. But it's just a really petty thing, and just supports the argument that the Warhammer community is really bitchy, and I'm part of the issue too. I bitch and complain a lot about GW, but not to the extent of our next person that we're going to talk about, Pontus. Now, first of all, I'd like to list off things that I like and dislike about Pontus. Now, let's always start positive, because I'm a firm believer that we can find things we like about anyone, really. And one thing I really do admire and I do respect about Pontus is that his just utter devotion to the lore and to this hobby is just something that I really admire. As someone who was a Star Wars fan, a die-hard Star Wars fan, ever since I was a little kid, I'm gonna be honest, dude. I was like Pontus, I would fact checking people, scrutinizing over the lore, hating anything that happened after Revenge of the Sith, And, well, I had the excuse of being young and, being more set in my ways. But, as I grew older, got more mature, I was able to open up and, finally like everything that, Disney made. Well, not everything, like Rogue One, first season of Mandalorian, Tales of the Empire, Tales of the Republic, I learned to, grow up, let bygones, well, some bygones be bygones, but, be open to the new interpretations of lore. One thing I will say about Pontus is that he is not lacking in passion for this hobby. And, that's cool. That's something that, I believe we should all strive for, It's like, it's really cool to see someone who's this devoted to the lore, the man who truly does care and love this hobby a lot. And, it's admirable in a way. And, it's something that we can respect, But on the contrary, I do believe Pontus lets his passion speak for him a lot more than he does let his mind think about it. I mean, he does call himself the angry Italian. However, I do believe Pontus embodies also a lot of the negative characteristics that come within this hobby. Most often than not, the really incredibly angry and just unwilling to change their stance on any new media after a certain point. And I can understand his anger. I truly do, watching like this hobby that he dedicated, his life to, which is kind of funny and, mad virgin vibes. But, it's just, he's so unwilling to change his mind. I mean, he said it himself, he hasn't read any book past The Fall of Cadia, and he's like refused to give anything else a chance. And it's just like, he's really closed-minded in that way. And I just don't believe that sets a good precedent for anyone who's trying to get into this hobby. When the guy who literally dedicates his life to the lore, and who a lot of people, I'm not gonna say like he doesn't get his facts straight, because he does do his research, but it's like the presentability, I'd say, of new Warhammer fans who get intimidated, and who was like, he's part of like, he's like those guys, fact checking. He's the actually guy of Warhammer, and I kind of love him for it. I love it and I hate it. I really liked his series, fact checking, and he's funny. Major Kill and Pontus, they're both funny. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say that I fucking hate Pontus with all my life. It's like, I truly think he's fucking funny, and I don't think that should be a shock, it's not wrong, it shouldn't be, it shouldn't be fucking unbelievable that I like Major Kill and Pontus, even though there are to me, very two different sides of the Warhammer community, in standing. Major Kill do whenever the fuck he wants, and yeah, I just feel like, we as a community, at least as a person who got into this hobby, through Bricky and Major Kill and all these other YouTubers that Pontus attacks as never getting the lore right. But at the end of the day, it's about presentability. And it's like, if you can't pander to new people and not completely dumb it down, but if you don't present it in a way that gets multiple different demographics of people into the hobby, this hobby's never going to grow. And as someone who's gotten, some of my friends into this hobby, and, how we all got into this hobby was these lore VTubers that, Pontus and, the Warhammer Reddit would attack as being never getting the lore, and just making overall a bunch of false claims about it, and, very cliche, but it's just not cool. Because at the end of the day, I like them both, and I like this hobby, no shit, I have a whole I had to start a whole YouTube channel, and, it's just, I feel like there are better ways for us to fact check people and to overall get more people to be able to dive in deep into the lore. And I guess the whole point of this video was just to put my thoughts out there, put my opinions, and just, ask y'all how y'all feel about it, I'm not gonna take down any comments, it's like, I genuinely want a discussion to happen, comment down below, like and subscribe, all that other YouTube stuff, because I don't like it when it's in the middle of the video, and bye.